Thank you so much for joining me for lesson 92 of Sefer HaMitzvos daily study. We are here right after Shabbat has ended, and we've got one day here before one. This is the last day of the counting of the Omer, and Shavuos is coming upon us very quickly. Today we have seven mitzvahs. And these seven mitzvahs are all, again, coming from this section in Mishnah Torah called Israel, the forbidden relationships. And so we're still talking about forbidden relationships and related mitzvahs. We're starting out with by the way, negative mitzvah 52, 53, 54, 55, though in reverse order, 55, 54, negative 354, negative 360, and negative 361. So starting out with negative mitzvah 52, this is the mitzvah not to intermarry between Jews and non-Jews. And it says here, you shall not make marriages with them. This is from Deuteronomy 7:3. And this is the mitzvah not to marry a non-Jew if you're Jewish. Now, of course, if they convert, then and they become Jewish, then you're allowed to marry them. Though it's not ideal for someone to convert for the sake of marriage. Nevertheless, the marriage would be valid. This specifically is talking about the nations that were in the land at that time when they came into the land, not to marry into those nations. But it's made explicit in the book of Ezra in a couple places that Ezra, his interpretation and showing what the oral tradition was at the time, is that these mitzvahs were forbidding marrying someone who was somebody from another nation. And obviously, part of the reason for that, not that we have to give a bunch of reasons, but part of the reason for that was that other nations were subjected to other gods, and so coming into a marriage with someone who was not from the land of Israel, who was not a worshiper of Hashem, then brought that person into contact with avodah zarah, with idolatry, and this is seen to be the case in various instances in the Tanakh. So, all right. Then there are specific mitzvahs not to marry someone from these two nations, the Ammonites and the Moabites. This comes from Deuteronomy 23:4, which says, an Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the congregation of God. And it was unclear for a while whether or not that meant both male and female. It was later determined through, and evidence of this is the book of Ruth. Ruth, who was a Moabitess, married into, after converting, she married into the congregation of Hashem, into the Jewish people, and so we learn from that it's forbidden specifically to marry a male Ammonite or Moabite even after they convert to Judaism. So again, not the interesting distinction. It's not forbidden for them to convert, but it is forbidden for them to convert to Judaism. Now the thing is, there's not really any way to tell who's Ammonite or Moabite. So at this point, this is still a mitzvah, though it's not one we're going to ever bump into. Rejecting an Egyptian. It says in Deuteronomy 23:8, do not reject an Egyptian. And this is the prohibition to utterly distance from an Egyptian convert. A third generation Egyptian convert must be allowed to marry among the Jewish people. So you can't just say, well, they're Egyptian, they are not allowed to marry my daughter, or for a daughter to say that they're not allowed to marry her, or a man to marry an Egyptian convert. After the third generation, then they're allowed to marry into the Jewish people. Again, today, the people of Egypt are not considered to be the same people who were in the land in the days of the Exodus, and so this one as well is not a huge concern. Rejecting an Edomite, the exact same thing. A third generation Edomite convert must be allowed to marry among the Jewish people. This comes again from the same or from the same exact verse. Do not reject the Edomite, since he is your brother. Then we come to marrying a mamzer. There are very few people that a mamzer is allowed to marry, though they're kind of like a separate class in Israel, and they don't marry into the larger assembly of the children of Israel. So Deuteronomy 23:3 says, a mamzer shall not inherit into the assembly of God. A child born of illicit relationships is called a mamzer. Such an individual may not marry a non-mamzer. There's a little bit more to it than that. Very interesting thing, but basically it comes down to this. If someone's taking part in an illicit relationship, a forbidden relationship, and they have a child, that child is a mamzer. If they're the offspring of a I won't get into the details on that, but you can read all about it in Mishnah Torah. Then Deuteronomy 23:2 forbids a castrated man from marrying a Jewish woman. Deuteronomy 23:2 says, a man with injured testicles or whose member is cut may not enter into the assembly of God. A man whose genitals have been damaged to the point that he is incapable of fathering a child may not marry a Jewish woman. The situation is that he should be bringing children into the world, and if he marries a Jewish woman, then she will not be able to conceive, and so it's not fair to her, and it's he needs to leave her so that she can marry someone who is able to give children. All right, and then Leviticus 22:24 says that tells us that it is forbidden to cause castration to a male whether human or animal, by damaging their genitals. It is forbidden to further damage the genitals of a male who has already been castrated. So if there was damage done, then they're not to complete the job. This comes from that verse which says, as for an ox or a sheep, or excuse me, skipping down to 24, any animal whose testicles were squashed, crushed, pulled out, or severed, you shall not offer up to the Lord, and in your land you shall not do it. And so that certainly we're not to offer it, but you shall not do it. Neither shall you do this in your land, tells us that it is forbidden to castrate a animal or a human. Um, and yeah, it's forbidden. And obviously, once that, if that has happened, then that man is not allowed to marry into the assembly of Hashem. So, all right, thank you so much for joining me today. Um, with God's help, we'll have another class tomorrow, and then we're going to have to make up the last two classes, which will happen on the days of Shavuos. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great day or a good night, Shavuot Tov, and a good Yantif.